Hey everybody, Alberto here, back with another episode for you guys. This time we're in Antigua, one of the world's most beautiful islands and top ocean sailing destination with events such as Antigua Race Week and several North American Opti Championships held throughout the years, even a Worlds in 2019. Being here in Antigua, one of the top ocean sailing destinations, I figured that I'd bring you guys some techniques and tips on how to sail in the ocean, where we're going to be covering topics such as how waves are formed, what different kinds of waves you're going to encounter, and the techniques to meet each. Because when you're out in the ocean, you'll see it's not as simple as just sail fast and get over the wave. So before we get into anything, remember to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any more content. So let's go ahead and get started. So the aim of this video is going to be several things. First, we're going to get over how waves are formed, the different kinds of waves that you're going to encounter in ocean conditions, and our top tips on how to race in ocean conditions. So before anything else, what is a wave? Well, first we need to understand that waves are not actually the water moving sideways. Waves are energy transferred from the wind. A wave is actually a function of the wind through friction and pressure, transferring its energy to the top surface of the ocean. And that causes wave energy to propulse itself across the ocean top, and that's where you see things like swells, breakers. They're the same wave that ends up in different places. When you have regular intervals of waves, we call those swells. They're made by wind, and they develop enough energy where you could actually turn the wind off, but you'll still get the swells in the general direction of where the wind created them, which means that they could actually come from a different direction than the general wind direction of where you're racing. So for example, here in Antigua, you can see the swells are crossing over with the general wind direction, but some come from very much further away in the Atlantic, and you can see them in this shot here. When coaches talk to you about waves, they're gonna use all kinds of language and vocabulary, so let's go over some of those things. A wave can be divided up into a few different parts. The distance halfway from the crest, the top of the wave, and from the middle down to the bottom of the wave is called the wave height. The wave height is the distance, again, from the crest to the trough of the wave, which is the bottom of the wave. How close the waves are together, we call that the wave period. So if you time a wave hitting the beach and you time it to be 3 seconds until the next wave, the wave period is 3 seconds. Wave periods can reach as low as seconds, as high as hours, and even days. And things like tidal waves, which are created by the gravity of the sun and the moon across the earth, create a tidal wave, or a tidal bulge, as some refer to it, that cause the water to move around the world, together with the rotation of the earth, cause the tides. Now, when we're talking about the strength of a wave, we have to measure the amplitude, which is really the distance between the median water height, which is halfway from the crest to the trough of the wave, to either the crest or the trough. You don't have to worry about that right now, but just understand that the taller the wave and the shorter the period, usually the more energetic they are, the faster they move and the more power they bring. The wider the amplitude and the wider the period, the slower moving the waves are, and you're going to experience them as more like a rolling hill than a sharp sudden mountain that you have to get over. So how do these things relate to sailing? Generally speaking, you need to understand the different parts of a wave to identify the different kinds of waves that you're going to encounter in ocean conditions. There are different kinds of waves that you're going to encounter, such as breakers, which you're going to find right at shore or where there's very sudden changes in elevation on the ocean floor. It's generally not advisable to sail through breakers because A, they're very close to shore, and also they carry so much energy, you have to be going really fast to get over it. So if you see breaking waves, that's generally a cause for concern when you're opti sailing. So don't sail through breakers. You're also going to hear the term swells. Swells are the types of waves that are made by the wind transferring its energy through friction and pressure on the top surface of the water. They build up enough energy that the wind doesn't need to be there anymore for them to move across. But just like any other wave in the pool, at your house, or your community pool, you're gonna see that they bounce. So waves will come across and bounce off of land following the shape of the shore. So for example, here in Nelson's Dockyard in English Harbor, you'll see that there's a point right here where the waves bounce off and get together and cross the swells on a day like today. It's really important for you when you're sailing to recognize the difference between these, because when you see a wave change in sudden direction, it's not the predominant wave direction. It's maybe a bounce wave or maybe it's a refractionary wave from something called superposition. That's a fancy way of saying that when waves meet in diagonal directions, they add together to create one really tall wave. For example, you're sailing along and all of a sudden you encounter a wave that's almost twice as high as the general swell. It's really important for you to keep a head on a swivel in ocean conditions because not only are they challenging, but they can be dangerous. The last kind of wave I want to mention is the difference between a wavelet and chop. Out in the ocean, you're not going to find chop. Chop is in bay or lake conditions, which is waves made by the wind, but there's not enough distance for the waves to turn into swells, or there's not enough water. You need deep water, you need lots of wind for a long time to build swells. The difference that you can see is that wavelets are much smaller than swells. And again, it's really important for you to keep a head on a swivel so you can see the wave coming off the side of your visual boundary. A wave that comes from the side is going to completely change your lane, so you need to adjust for it as quickly as possible and sail for power so you can get over the wave as quickly as possible. That brings us to technique. Talking about these different kinds of waves and how they affect the shoreline or they affect you, what kind of technique should you be using? A lot of coaches will talk about different things, but the most important thing is that what I'm about to say is general and you can adjust it for your body weight and sailing style. Generally speaking, when you're sailing in ocean conditions, you want to sail more for power than for angle. But again, this is a very broad generalization because it really depends on how steep the waves are, the wave period, how fast they're coming across, and from what direction. So generally speaking, if you're sailing in swells and a little bit of bounce waves or close to shore, you might encounter some rogue waves, let's call them rogue waves. You're going to be focusing on the trough of the wave for your maneuvers, so you want to tack or jibe at the bottom of a wave where you don't have a risk of the wave pushing you and capsizing you, like for example when you try to tack or jibe on the top of a wave. Now when you're encountering a wave, you're ready to go up the wave, you want to make sure you have power in your sail. You want to make sure that you have balance, a feel for balance on your main sheet hand and your tiller hand. Your tiller hand is going to tell you how much power is in the boat. Your main sheet hand is going to tell you how much power you have in your sail. If you don't feel like there's a lot of balance in between those, maybe a little bit more of a pull on your rudder, then you need to retune your boat. I definitely recommend you guys to make sure you have proper tuning when you head out on the water. Don't just go out into the ocean blind. You want to be as prepared as possible. Which brings me to another tip. Make sure your boat is in top condition before you head out to the ocean because you don't want to suffer breakages out there. So that means making sure your airbags are in good condition, making sure your main sheet is in good condition, making sure your bow line is free of knots and not fraying, and making sure your sail doesn't have any micro tears or tears that might blow out in the middle of racing in the ocean. Check this video out here for more information on how to keep your boat in racing shape. When talking about sail trim, you really want to be focusing on maximum flow across your tailtails. You don't want to be focusing on pointing really high in very short wave periods or very tall wave heights because those waves are going to carry a lot of energy and you're going to lose out on vertical distance if you're trying to pinch. Pinching is a death sentence in racing in the ocean. If you try to pinch, especially around the mark, if you're not laying up the mark correctly, you're gonna have a really hard time getting around the course. Another tip is on the downwind, you lose the sideways pressure of the sail. So you really wanna make sure you stay connected with the boat and have 1 foot over the hiking strap and 1 foot under the hiking strap at all times. That way, you're not dependent on your torso, your core strength for balance, and you can really feel how the boat is pitching and rolling in the waves. If you have a foot under the hiking strap, it's easier for you to extend in case there's a big puff or a big shift. And not to mention how the apparent wind changes. The apparent wind changes a lot in ocean conditions because you're speeding up as you head down the wave and you're slowing down as you head up a wave. So you really want to be focusing on what the apparent wind is doing and how it's shifting. Your wind indicator is going to become your best friend in ocean conditions. Not only is it going to hint at you as to when the shift is going to come, but it's also going to talk to you about how the apparent wind is shifting across your boat. But general rule of thumb is as the apparent wind shifts forward, you want to trim in and head up. But again, it depends on the waves that you're about to come across. So if it's a really tall and steep wave because the wave period is really short, you're really going to be sailing more for power than for height. The opposite is also true. If you're sailing in mostly swells, broad wave period, you're going to be sailing more for pointing than for power. So how do we put this all together? Waves are actually energy across the water. It's water going up and down, meeting the wave energy as it comes across. Waves can bounce, change direction, and waves are generally in the same direction as the wind, but you really want to be paying attention to changes in the wave direction to see where ships might be coming from. Keep your boat in top shape before you head out into the ocean, and practice, practice, practice. If you get a chance to come to a place like this in Antigua, or sail out in the ocean, or practice out in the ocean, you're gonna be much better prepared for any regattas in the ocean you might encounter. So who knows? If you make it to a North Americans or a European regatta out in the North Sea or the Atlantic, you're gonna be ready to go. Again, if you guys like this video and learned something from it, give it a like and share it with your friends or your coach. And if you really like this video, consider becoming a Patreon subscriber, where we post exclusive content and show you guys these videos early. For $3 a month, you can help support the channel and help me make more videos like this one. Again, this has been Alberto for Opti TV. See you out on the water.